All right, hello everyone. I think we're going to start. So, welcome to our Sacristan Training. I know it's been a crazy year, and I'm looking forward to regrouping and restoring a lot of our ministries back to where they were pre-COVID. And so thank you for being here tonight. And remember, those of you who have served in a mass coordinator or sacristan role in the past, note that these two ministries are now going to be combined as sacristan. And so for now, until July 1st, which is when the next schedule starts, it'll be mass coordinator until then. And then once you get that July 1st schedule, it's going to be sacristan. And that's going to be for both weekend and weekday. So from going forward July 1st, you'll be known as sacristans. And we'll talk a little bit about that after Kellen speaks tonight as well. And so we have a couple things on our agenda tonight. The first thing is we'll be hearing from our guest speaker, Kellen O'Grady. He's the Director of Music and Liturgy at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Hastings, Minnesota. It's also the place where Father Shireman is now. So he's got Father Shireman right now. Kellen and I met at the University of St. Thomas. And he's been a very good friend and mentor to me since then. I worked for him a little bit at the chapel, and then we've stayed friends since. I've asked him to join us tonight to talk about the importance of the role of sacristan, along with some tips and tricks and opportunity for prayer together. And then secondly, at the end, after Kellen is done speaking, we'll just briefly go over this handbook. So this handbook, I've gone through and made it for, it's combined for a lot of the mass coordinator and sacristan roles. So we'll go through it a little bit, but I'm going to have you guys take it home and read it because it's a little bit heavy, and we won't go through things step by step. But for those of you who are new, so a couple of you, you're going to be paired with a current sacristan starting July 1st. So you'll have 3 times with them before you're on your own. And we'll talk a little bit more about that after Kellen's done speaking. So without further ado, I'll introduce Kellen. He can come up and start speaking.
Here we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me back. In addition to rubbing in the fact that you guys had Father Matt for 1 year, he's going into his 3rd year with us. And we're super excited about that. But also, I was here Emily had invited me to speak about the Triduum the weekend before lockdown. So I was talking about all sorts of like fun Triduum stuff, and then nobody got to participate in it that year. But I hope it at least enhanced the at-home experience of last Easter. So I'm going to walk through this evening, hopefully inspiring you in your ministry a little bit. Why do we have sacristans? Why would you want to sacristan? What this looks like in a broader aspect as a leadership role, and as a leader in the parish here. And then some time for prayer and sort of cultivating a sacristan's prayer life as you go about this ministry. So first, why do we need this role? Why is it important? I think the first thing I would say is that you're really helping the priest to pray, right? He's the head of our church. He's the head of your parish here. And he's the president and the main figure of the liturgy, the Mass as it takes place here. So instead of having this leader running around and making sure everything's in order and all of that, you're allowing him to be a little more centered, right, and a little more prayerful in how he approaches and leads and ministers to the congregation through the liturgy. Midway through the Mass, we say, now I'm blanking on the dialogue. May the Lord accept the sacrifice at your hands for the praise and glory of his name, for our good and the good of all his holy church. We say that in response to a call of the priest, and it's us using our baptismal call, giving it to the priest to offer on our behalf. So what I want to emphasize by this is we're orienting ourselves to him as the leader of the Mass, right? But all of us who are here also have a very vital role in our participation in the Mass. So not only are you helping the priest pray, but by doing this, you're also helping the congregation to pray as well. And the more people who are cognizant of their prayer, the more people who are deeply brought into the mysteries that we celebrate, in breaking open the Word, and in participating in the Eucharistic sacrifice, that the richer experience for everyone, right? And your leadership as a sacristan is also making sure that the lectors are ready and raring to go, that the Eucharistic ministers are ready to go, that everyone knows what role that they're going to play. Those who take part in the liturgy should know what they're doing and should be mentally prepared just like the priest. That we, in our baptismal priestly call of priest, prophet, and king, offering it to the priest, and all of this is brought into what you're doing as sacristans, bringing this together. I would strongly encourage all of you to to take a capacity to pray ahead of your ministry, right? In our communal work and our communal prayer, there's a lot of preparation, even in just showing up, right? The church calls each of us to look ahead at the readings before we come to Mass, so that what we hear during the liturgy of the Word, we're not hearing merely for the first time, right? Again, reiterating all of the preparation that's necessary, even to just show up to Mass, right? So that each person's able to fully grasp what God's calling them to within the liturgy, fully grasp what's going on, and to really hold on and receive all those graces that are available to us through the sacraments and through Mass. Often it takes a while to get to that place of prayer. And so I'd encourage each of you as sacristans to take some time ahead of acting out your ministry for a quiet prayer. I know there's a sacristan's prayer in the back of your guide. To just take some quiet moments ahead of all the things that you need to do, ahead of the preparation and the work that you're about within this sanctuary and within this parish. Preparation is of vital importance to good liturgy. That's why you have so many wonderful staff members who are doing this full time in your parish, to bring the liturgy together, to bring the music together, to order all the supplies, to make sure the priests know what they're doing. And again, you play a vital role in that. Bishop Barron, who you may have heard before, he's a bishop out in California, but he also has a Word on Fire organization, which does a lot of evangelical work. They do videos, they do talks, they do all sorts of things like that. Bishop Barron has a lot of things to say on liturgy, and in his Catholicism series, he talks about the liturgy as play. And just like kids, when we're preparing, you're playing house, right, as a little kid, and you're preparing and you're practicing to be an adult in the world. The liturgy and our church and our sanctuary here becomes that safe space by which we can play and learn and be formed to then go out and live our discipleship, live our Catholicism, live our faith out in the world. Oftentimes you'll see kids go outside, or you'll be playing with them in the living room, right? And they get to a certain age and they go through this massive preparation to play. They'll explain to you all the rules, and it has to be done just this way, and no, these blocks go over here, and no, you're going to play this role, and I'm going to be the astronaut, and you're going to be the control person, right? And they lay out all these long rules and sort of create this universe in their play. And this in a sense is what we do when we come to church. The church has all it's the importance of the ritual. It's important the importance of all those books. Do the red, say the black. We're conforming ourselves to what God is asking of us. We're conforming ourselves to the ways of virtue that we can learn through the scriptures, we learn through the continual ritual sacrifice, the gathering together that we are truly one with one another in the body of Christ, with our fellow congregants. And by repeating this process over and over again, that it becomes imbued in our souls, and we're able to take it out into the world. I'm sure I've said it if some of you have heard me speak before, but I'll say it again. The liturgy gives us something new with each turn. It really is the work of a lifetime. We go through the same celebration of the Paschal Mystery over the course of a year. We come back to the same Easter Sunday each week. Frequently, we celebrate the same ritual daily if you're able to make it to daily Mass. Each time you come to your sacristan role for the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, you're doing the same thing over again. But why do we come back to the sacred scripture, to this sacrifice again and again? Is because it has something new to teach us. It has something that we're able to, something new that we're able to learn each time we go through it. And so as each week, each month, each year goes on, there might be something different. There might be something that would catch our eye in a new way, which is that transformation by God's grace to be the Christians, to be the Catholics, the good people, the disciples of Christ that he's calling us to be. The book by which the priest says Mass is called the Roman Missal. And after the Second Vatican Council, it was split into two books. You had the Lectionary, where all the readings were, and then you had the Sacramentary, where all the prayers were, the Eucharistic prayers, and all the descriptions of how the priest would go about celebrating Mass. And then about 10 years ago, we had the change of translation. And the Sacramentary went back to being called the Roman Missal, despite the fact that the Lectionary was still its own separate book. But something that was very interesting about that new publication was there's a completely separate document called the General Instruction of the Roman Missal. In short, we call it the GIRM, G-I-R-M, for those of us who are liturgy geeks. And this whole document's in the front of the Missal. And so, in addition to all of the action items that are within the Missal, this whole document sort of expands on that and gives some deeper description of what's to be done and who does what role and all those sorts of things. And it does, and putting that in the Missal, I think, was the church telling us, highlighting this particular document and the importance of what this explanation, right, what was said there. So I want to highlight a few things. It sounds a little dry, but as I read through a few of these paragraphs, I'll expand upon it a little bit. The General Instruction of the Roman Missal, or the GIRM, does specifically mention your role as sacristans. It says a liturgical function is also exercised by the sacristan, who diligently arranges the liturgical books, the vestments, and the other things that are necessary for the celebration of the Mass. So I just want to emphasize by that your baptismal call, the virtue of your baptism, you are playing a liturgical role. It isn't just something that's auxiliary to the liturgy, it's vital to it. All that preparation work that you do. The germ highlights specifically the function of the people of God, right? It's not just all about the priest. While the priest is our head, and that is where we started this evening, all the people of God play a role in the celebration of the Mass. In the celebration of the Mass, the faithful form a holy people, a people of God's own possession, and a royal priesthood, so that they may give thanks to God and offer the unblemished sacrificial victim, not only by means of the hands of the priest, but also together with him, so that they may learn to offer their very selves. It's truly who you are that is being offered to the altar and shared with Christ in the Eucharistic sacrifice. They should, moreover, take care to show this by their deep religious sense, their charity towards their brothers and sisters who participate with them in the same celebration. I think that's a very pivotal line. I'll read it again. They should, you as the people of God, moreover, take care to show this by their deep religious sense, that love that you have for God, that love that you have for your brothers and sisters, the piety, the devotion that you bring to your ministry. Whatever's called you here today, whether it's merely seeing a need, or whether you were in the Adoration Chapel one day praying before the Blessed Sacrament and God was like, be a sacristan. Take care to show this by their deep religious sense and their charity to their brothers and sisters, right? It's always balancing and always that action towards other people who participate with them in that same celebration. The people of God, therefore, are consequently to avoid any appearance of singularity or division. We're all in this together. Keeping in mind that they have only one Father in heaven, and that hence are all brothers and sisters to one another. So I think one of the things that is important for you as a sacristan to remember, especially as you're basically leading a team, right? That there should be no singularity or division. That we're all in this. We're all in this together. We're all equal as we come before God. Church frequently is one of those few places where everybody, rich, poor, man, woman, anything like that, we're all together. We all find ourselves in that same congregation. Moreover, they are to form one body, whether in hearing the word of God, or in taking part in the prayers and in the singing, or above all by the common offering of the sacrifice, and by participating together at the Lord's table. This unity is beautifully apparent from the gestures and bodily postures observed together by the faithful. And this is my favorite line as a director of liturgy and music. The faithful, moreover, should not refuse to serve the people of God in gladness whenever they are asked to perform some particular service or function in the celebration. Let me say that again. That means when I'm going, hey, could you do this for me? The church is asking you to serve with gladness. The faithful, moreover, should not refuse to serve the people of God in gladness whenever they are asked to perform some particular service or function in the church. And you have been asked to do that here today. As I've said, you're leaders here in the parish. You're very visible, and you are role models for everyone who walks through these doors, especially, and I'll highlight this a little bit later, for the young kids. You should carry yourself with dignity of the service, of the ministry that you're performing. To dress up and to dress well for the task that you're about. Asking yourself each time, is what I'm doing, the way I'm carrying myself, the way I'm treating others, showing everyone else just how important this is, just how important the ministry is, just how important the act that we're about to do in this sanctuary is supposed to be. Are you greeting people generously and with great love? Do you welcome others in your role, or do you sometimes become territorial? I know I do that in my professional life sometimes. I get a little too worried about how well something is going and forget the pastoral aspects of who's walking through the door. And I have to stop myself and remember, it's not all about me. It's not all about the perfection of the choir. There's something much deeper going on. I have a few dads who have become very involved, especially during COVID, but also before, with the liturgical roles of the church. I know you're just beginning some monthly adoration here, Cor Jesu, and we've been doing that for a few years now. And they're very vital in helping with that, as well as our Sunday sacristan roles and things like that. And they're fathers of young children. Particularly, actually, these two dads that I'm particularly thinking of are all fathers of young girls. And they are, the way that they lead their young children through the process of setting up for Mass is just beautiful. And the effect and the image that that will have on these young people as they continue to grow up, they get older, they face the trials and just the struggles of being a teenager in the 21st century, right? To have this moment locked in their head, just I'm in awe of the effect that being a sacristan can have. And I've seen it work and I've seen it happen. Your ministry can have that kind of an effect, particularly on those young people, young kids. Be aware of that. Let them be curious. Let them see. And I know this works because I've had my own effects from my grandfather being sacristan. My grandfather setting up for Mass at St. Patrick's in LaSalle, Illinois. It was this gorgeous neo-Gothic church built by my Irish immigrants who came to Illinois to dig the ditches in the 19th century. And walking around with him, even before I'd received my first communion, to go and they would place he would go early to place the host at the door. And they would have everyone turn over a host into the dish so that the count was even, right? But to walk around in the sacristy and taste the unconsecrated bread and look at all the fancy vessels and go up with him onto the altar to set things at the credence table, this is one of the most vivid memories of my young childhood. The effect that you can have as a sacristan is there, I promise you. So now I want to take a step back and kind of think about the prayer life of you as sacristans here. The first thing that you need to cultivate inside yourself is obviously, as I've talked about through this talk, the servant's heart, serving for other people. And when you come here, you'll frequently be the first one that gets here and the last one to leave. And instead of, sometimes that can feel a little lonely. Sometimes you might have to rush out. You might have this urgency to rush out and get on to brunch plans after Mass or what have you. But I would encourage you to really delve into and cultivate that quiet time when you're here, especially when you're here by yourself. That you really are about the work of God. It's a moment for you as lay people to kind of place yourself in a monastic sense, For a little while, you're maybe a religious, right? To make each of your actions as you're setting up slow, deliberate. To make each movement, each vessel, each piece of cloth that you're dealing with a continual prayer as you set up. One might think of it as, you're puttering around a garden, maybe to come up with a different analogy, right? And you're kind of pruning a little bit here, and you're fixing a little bit there, and you're planting this thing here, and slowly it all comes together through the quiet and careful work that you're about as a sacristan. One thing I've learned through the pandemic is to really relish in and appreciate noble simplicity. Church documents talk about that and use that phrase, especially in the Second Vatican Council, when referring to how we celebrate as Roman Catholics. In a lot of other rites within the church, you get lots of fancy thurible flipping and florid vestments, and in the Eastern rites, the whole Eucharistic prayer is hidden behind a cloth, and there's just a lot of things going on. The Roman rite is described as being nobly simplistic. We do things once, we do it well. Not to say there's nothing cheap about it. There's nothing quick about it. It's deliberate, and everything means something. Everything that we do at Mass and every vessel and cloth, right, has its purpose and its place. And as I had to, throughout the last year, really draw things back, pull back a lot of things that had crept up because of custom in our parish, and pull back a lot of things because we just couldn't have more than 10 people in the space, right? But we were still live streaming these elaborate liturgies, right? I really had to fall back to this phrase of noble simplicity, and really get into the root of what we are, what we're doing at Mass, and how we're worshiping. And it's really something I want to hold on to as things come back to life, because I think that phrase makes things easier on me in my worry of the checklist of things to do. It makes things easier on you as ministers and my own ministers down in Hastings, to know exactly what's going on, be very precise, deliberate, and do the few things well. Do things well. Make sure we do them well. And if we aren't doing everything well and to the best of our ability, that we can pull back a little bit and get back to that root of a noble simplicity. So that's enough of me talking. I want to take some time for prayer, because if we don't pray, we've lost the whole scope of what we're about. So I'm going to go over to the piano. We'll have a little bit of music. I'll have some reflective questions. I'll have you sing with me a little bit. We can't not sing. Just spend a few moments. If anything that I've spoken about this evening has struck your heart so far, reflect on that. But really listen to God and listen to what He's saying to you this evening as you're re-entering into this ministry or beginning this ministry for the first time, because it is important and it is vital to the parish here at St. Stephen's. Give me some time to get over there. Let's place ourselves in the presence of God. going to have you sing a refrain with me this evening. The text is, be still, and know that he is God. That's it. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. Sing it with me. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. Quiet your spirit, open your heart, draw close and enter, just as you are. All are invited, together with heaven, and witness the mystery at the altar of hope. Sing with me. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. Though earth be shaken, though mountains quake, God is our refuge, where fear fades away. Rest in the silence and be filled with his peace, as grace overtakes us at the altar of hope. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. We place at the altar the gifts of ourselves, our prayers of thanksgiving, together are blessed with anticipation What kind of discipleship is he asking of you in this parish? How can you serve in your ministry in a new way the next time you come? Our Lord, present before you this evening here in the tabernacle, loves you so much. Just take a moment and experience that love. Can you imagine sharing it here in this parish and out in the world? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Emily, we forgot to pull out vessels, so I think we'll do that bit if we do a sacristy tour at the end. That seems to make the most sense. I do have a couple tips and tricks that I'm going to share before I turn it back over to Emily. Checklists are great, but there's nothing quite like being able to walk through the Mass in your head. Just take home that guide, study it, and it's a practiced thing to do. But we've been talking about the slow and the deliberate and all of that. That as you're preparing for your sacristaning, you're going about making sure everything's in order, it's very helpful, I found, to have that whole Mass thing locked up in your head. Kind of picture the priest going through everything, and, at this point he needs this book. That's set, check. And especially that beginning part of the Eucharistic prayer, where you've got all the patens and the hosts and the wine and the ciboria and all of that, to just mentally walk through that ritual, right? It's the same every time. Get that locked away in your head. Is one of the best things I've found, as long as you have that slow and deliberate preparation to try to avoid those mistakes. Getting over host anxiety, or what I like to call host anxiety. One of the, at least down in Hastings and at the University of St. Thomas, when I had student sacristans, this was the case, and it has to be the case here too. One of the most nerve-wracking things as a sacristan is making sure you have enough hosts. And I will say flat out, sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is to not have enough, because then it happened and then it's over with. It happened the first time I was a student sacristan. I was short by about 200. Worst case scenario. Getting over host anxiety. It is always good to check in the tabernacle and see what's in there. And to sometimes physically just go out and count. If you're looking at the whole scope of the congregation, if you can count maybe all of the people in one section here, and then multiply it by each of the other sections. It's a quick, fast, easy way to know exactly how many people you've got. Maybe take some time practicing with the ciborium, the bread plates. Maybe dump 100 hosts in there. Kind of take a mental picture of what that looks like. Maybe dump 200 in there, 300, or however that works, and have a mental picture. Go ahead and I said play a little bit in the sacristy to know what that looks like. So you can kind of practice sort of eyeballing, right? We use big jugs down in Hastings. One of the sacristans went through and marked a 100 level, a 250 level, a 300 level. Hosts almost always look like there's less of them than there actually is. So the rule of thumb, if you don't think you have enough, you probably do. If you don't think you have enough, you probably do. I'm going to let Emily handle any sort of questions regarding purification and cleansing of vessels and what to do with the cloths and all of that. But I do want to address a fine line that can happen between proper care of cleaning up after Mass and scrupulosity over worrying that you're doing something wrong with the sacred species, with what's the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. Because we say that God is truly present in the wine and in the bread, transformed into his body and blood, no longer wine and bread, and that can be a little nerve-wracking sometimes. Once it can no longer be considered wine or no longer be considered bread, Christ is no longer present there. But what's left over should be disposed of properly. So, what does that mean? It means if a host falls on the floor or there's a piece that's gotten dirty or something like that, say there's some reason no one's able to consume it right away, or you find a particle mixed in with one of the cloths. As soon as that would still be Christ, right? That presence of Christ, you would take that piece, dissolve it in water. As soon as that host is dissolved, it's no longer a host, no longer looks like bread, it no longer contains what is bread. Christ is no longer present there. But we still need to dispose of it reverently because it once was. Does that all make sense? So then that goes down in the special sink of the sacrarium, which goes directly into the ground. With the precious blood or the wine, sometimes there's spills, things happen. I presume and I hope that both species come back after COVID is all over, and we've gotten through this. Obviously not a moment now, but sometimes those purificators, the white cloths, get super soaked up with blood, and there's large blotches and wine soaked in there, and well, what do I do with this? Or maybe there's a spill and you've had to clean it up. How do I deal with that? If it's dried, it's no longer wine. It's no longer under that form of wine. Christ is no longer there. You would rinse it out in the sacrarium, and all that's left over gets put into the dirt. Or you can place it in a bowl to soak. That gets all dissolved in the water. It's no longer Christ and gets dumped into the sacrarium. Make sense? Kind of an easy rule of thumb. You're making it no longer under that form and then disposing of it reverently. And I would, as sacristans, though it's not ideal, but just practically, at some point get trained under all the ministries, because you're the best person to kind of fill in when the inevitable emergency happens. We don't want you to be doing everything all the time, but it is helpful, and I found it helpful as a sacristan and for my sacristans to have them at least have a working knowledge, because they'll tend to go to you with the questions, and in that emergency, it's always nice to be able to slide in and take care of it, and then no pressure, and everyone can pray really well. With that, does anyone have any immediate questions for me? Cool. I'm going to turn it back over to Emily. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for having me here this evening. It's always a joy to come up to St. Stephen's. And good luck, and God bless you all.
Hello. Okay, I'm going to use the mic, and I've had Kellen up here, and I'm going to have myself up here, just because I'm actually recording this for people who weren't able to make it tonight. On our live stream up there, it's actually a live stream, so hopefully I don't embarrass myself. So we are going to walk through the handbook just a little bit. So tonight, I decided not to walk through everything step by step, because I know most of you have done this already. When I was writing this handbook, I actually did it with the idea in mind of kind of what we've been doing for the last year. Because since COVID has started, we basically combined Mass coordinator and sacristan. And because of that, going forward with just the amount of ministers we have, and just for maybe a little bit more efficiency in getting people trained and things like that, I decided to keep it that way for now. So, when you walk through this handbook, you're going to notice that if you've been doing this for the last year, it's really similar to what you've been doing, which is why I'm just going to have our newbies be trained in under some of you in the next couple of weeks to get the hang of things. There are a few things that I want to talk about as we just walk through the different things that are in this handbook. So if you want to turn to page 6, I know many of you have been weekday sacristans, which is a new thing since COVID. And we're going to keep that in place, at least for the time being. Mass is going to remain in the church until further notice at this point. So so communion services are going to be a thing that's going to pop up actually pretty soon, this month. Some of our priests are going to be gone. Well, all of our priests are going to be gone. So our deacons are going to be doing communion services a couple of days in the end of June. And those of you who are scheduled for those, I'll send you an email about it too. But on page 6, I walk through kind of the just basic how a communion service will run when you're here. So it's a lot simpler than Mass is. And so if you want to take a look at that one, if I tell you that you're going to be there for a communion service, that'd be great. They're really pretty easy, so don't be worried about it at all. Then going on to page 7, for those of you who have been doing weekday masses, and if you want to be part of those weekday masses and be a sacristan for those, let me know. I've got the general how-to from page 7 to 9. And in that too, if you guys want just like a little visual of what you need to do for when you ring the bells, I've got that in there on page 8. And then I've got a little bit of instruction for if you have a visiting priest on page 9. Just if that does ever happen, just let him know what you can do for him and that you've got all these things set up, and if he needs anything, if he has questions, things like that. So basically your role is to help them be able to say Mass here and know if there are any traditions that he might not be used to. And then just for holy days of obligation and solemnities, just know that if you're a weekday sacristan, your role might change a little bit because I'll get lectors sometimes, and I will have altar servers every once in a while for those as well. But I said that you will be notified ahead of time if those things happen, but just so you're aware of it. And then on page 10, right now it's a little bit lacking information. We are in the process of figuring out what's going on with school mass for next year. So once that happens, I will give you guys an updated handbook. I know a lot of you have been have been sacristans during those school masses and kind of get what's going on. It's very similar to weekday masses. There are just a couple differences with Eucharistic ministers because our teachers do that. But next year in the past we've had school sacristans that have come to those masses along with altar servers. So I'm not entirely sure if we're going to be bringing back those ministries for the fall, but once I know, I'll let you guys know. And then on page 11, I've got the weekend Mass procedures for 5 p.m. Mass, for 8:30, and for 10:30. So I know some of you for the last year have been doing the outdoor Mass. And for now, so I didn't put any of the outdoor Mass information on there because I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be actually doing that Mass. So actually this coming weekend is going to be the last weekend for at least a couple weeks that we'll be having the outdoor Mass because we're having that parking lot repaved. So if you're scheduled for the 8:30 a.m. Mass and the outdoor Mass, I actually want to talk to you guys before you leave to kind of chat about what we're going to do going forward. And we'll see. We had a survey this last week, so I don't know if we're going to be bringing that back. But I'll keep you guys updated as I know as well. So anyway, on page 11, you've got those procedures and duties for 5 p.m. Mass, for 8:30, and for 10:30. 6 p.m. is a little different, and we'll get to that in a minute. But just for you guys to be aware, there are a couple of things that I just want to point out. So I will be having that ministry check-in list in the sacristy for now. I'm working on getting an iPad for sign-in, but for now we're going to have it just paper form, regular. We have communion team leads that are back, so you'll be working with them for communion. And I know some of you have already been doing this the last 2 weeks, so we've kind of gotten a lot of the kinks out and still are working with a couple different things. But just know that when you're looking for ministers and making sure people are there, they should be checking in and signing into that sign-in sheet. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to hunt for them, but hopefully we'll get back into the routine of that in the next couple of weeks. When we're talking about credence table setup, one of the things that's been happening in the last couple of weeks is those stoppers on those cruets have been left in there. Actually, I want you guys to not ever put those in there. So we're gonna hide them in the sacristy just because it throws off my servers and they're like, oh my gosh, and they get up there and they're not out. So we're just gonna eliminate them. So forget that those cruets ever had stoppers. Cool? All right, so moving forward to, just so you know that we're not going to be distributing the precious blood for quite a while. So I didn't include that in this handbook. So we're just going off the fact that we are only distributing the body of Christ. So I've got that on page 12. I've got some approximations on there, and I know Kellen talked about host anxiety. So I've got a basic number, but right now those numbers are in flux. So 6 p.m. generally I would say maybe 150 hosts, but we had probably 250 last week. So you kind of got to eyeball it because every week has been different recently. But I just kind of did an overall, this is probably average. So take it as you will. And then again on page 12, you notice that I have the gift table in there, but we're not going to be doing the gift table still until further notice, but I just threw it in there just in case because I see that coming back more quickly than anything else. Then moving on to page 13, and this is for kind of even for 6 p.m. Mass, this is pretty similar. So you're going to be the one that's kind of looking over the ministers and making sure everybody's kind of set as well. So, and that's kind of taking over from the Mass coordinator aspect of these two things combined. So just making sure you help the altar servers. Make sure if they have any questions. Sometimes we've got a couple newbies in our altar server program. We've got a little second grader, and she's hardly served at all so far, so she might need a little bit of help. And I try to schedule experienced servers with those little ones, but it doesn't always happen that way, so they might need help. And I forgot to mention, too, on page 11, I do have it in there that you guys can announce any ministry needs 10 minutes before Mass if you need to. So I am okay with you going up 10 minutes before Mass starts. If you're I don't have a lector, I need an altar server, they haven't shown up, go ahead and announce that need. And sometimes, too, I've found before in my past parishes, if you announce that, sometimes people will be like, oh, no, I was the one scheduled for it. And they'll go back into the sacristy and be like, I'm so sorry, I forgot. So go ahead and do that if you need to. It's just a simple announcement. Hello, we're in need of an altar server. If you're able, please come to the sacristy. Something as simple as that. Do you guys have any questions about that before I keep going? All right, cool. So back to page 13, just, check in with those different ministries. So the head usher, see if they need anything. Check in with the lectors. Just a reminder that if there's a deacon at Mass, that he's going to be the one that reads the prayers of the faithful. So just make sure to check in with the lector if you see that a deacon shows up, because they don't always tell me that they're coming. So it's not always on the schedule. They like to kind of surprise people. So go ahead and check in with that lector and tell them, hey, just so you know, there's a deacon here, and you don't have to read the prayers of the faithful today. And then after that, you just do the final check with the priest and the communion team lead. The communion team lead is going to be your best buddy during Mass. So they're going to be the ones that are going to help you to find or to know how many ciboria you need out, and things like that. And they're going to be the one to, I didn't talk about this either. Sorry, I'm going back in time. Okay, so on page 12, I also talk about this, and this has been something that we've been kind of figuring out in the last 2 weeks as well, is the trays with the ciboria. So for now, I've worked with the priests on this now, and hopefully we have the kinks out for this weekend. They are going to be purifying all of the plates for now. So that means, because part of the reasoning behind what I've been doing with this, I want the servers to have a little bit more of a role in preparing the altar. And so they're going to be the ones, as long as they can carry those trays, because they get a little bit heavy. So like we had our little second grader a couple of weeks ago, she couldn't carry it. So we had the bigger servers carry it. But sometimes there might not be a big enough server to carry those trays. But the general rule of thumb is that I want those servers carrying the trays from the credence table. So you might have to help them, or you might just have to do it depending on their ability. So just check with them before Mass if it looks like they're all very small, to see if they're able to lift that tray. And I have it more detailed out in the handbook, so take a look at that. Because I have it as you guys are the main ones to take that tray up if they're not able to. And then if we have multiple trays, and I'm thinking into the future as we have cups and such, that you're going to be helping those servers with those. And I'm going to work through it once we have cups. But generally we want servers, and then you guys if they're not able to carry those. Does that make sense? That's the biggest change that's happened since COVID, so I just want to check in with you guys before we move on. Which Mass was that for? Yeah, so because before we didn't have that many ciboria, but now that we have the communion back to the way it was, we've had the tray the last 2 weeks. So yeah, it's only been in the last 2 weeks that this has happened, that we've had more ciboria than they can carry, not on a tray. So. Yeah, it might be sometimes, and you're going to see this if you're new to, every Mass is a little bit different, and everybody has their way of doing it. So you just kind of got to find your own way to do things and how it's set up and stuff. But there's generally like an overall look to things. The trays, yep, with the ciboria, yep. Yeah, yep. Go ahead, Renee. Yeah, yep, that's a great point. So if they're not able to carry those trays, yeah, sit behind them, right? So I would go up probably during the homily and sit behind them and then help them out with that if they're needed. Yep. Perfect question. Cool. Anything else before we move on in the handbook? I don't want to keep you guys much longer. Cool. All right, so moving on to page 15. So 6 p.m. Mass, as I said, is a little bit different. We are actually moving forward and officially saying that the 6 p.m. Mass is not going to have music, and it's going to be just much more simple. So it's going to kind of be a hybrid of the regular like weekend Masses and a daily Mass. So when you read over that, you'll notice that some things are overlapping with both of those. And then note too, so there's no music, there's no altar servers, there's only going to be one lector. All right, so that goes through page 18, and then the rest of it is a liturgical vocabulary. So if you guys are unsure of what somebody's talking about, you've got a handy reference for it. So I've tried to do all of the basic things and a couple wild cards in there, but yeah, that's it in your handbook. So if you guys want to take this home and just go ahead and read it and pray about it and such, know that I'm going to be scheduling our new people with some of you in the next couple of weeks for just training and to learn from all of you guys for the Masses. And then starting July 1st, remember that these Mass Coordinator and Sacristan roles are going to be combined, and you're going to be known as sacristans going forward. So when you see that in the schedule, don't be confused. You're Mass Coordinator and Sacristan all together, sacristan. So do you guys have any questions? Yeah. We are, and this is a great question. So I am actually in the process of getting new name tags. So I'll have them by July 1st is my hope. And so what I have done is make just overall specific, like it says sacristan, but it doesn't have your name on it, just because I have gotten a huge basket of old name tags. So I'm just making them generic now, and they're gonna always be in the sacristy on that metal cabinet. Unless you're an usher. The usher ones will be in the crozier room on the metal hangy things. Yes, yep. I'm gonna make it a lot simpler, and then it's gonna have our new logo on it too, so, yeah. Good question. Do you guys have any questions? I do have one tip, if you guys all want to come up and stand with me back over here. So I didn't grab the key, but when you guys come up to the tabernacle and open it, you actually, and I don't know, some of you might not have opened this before. Actually, Joe, do you know where the key is? It's actually hanging on the hook in the vestment closet. Oh yeah, Julie knows where it is. Cool. Because I know sometimes this is a little bit tricky to open. Yeah, so you're gonna want to, and maybe we don't even need the key, but so you guide it open. So don't like slam it open, you just gotta guide it gently. So, I don't know, we don't have to actually watch this, but you guys can have a stretch break. But besides that, do you guys have any other questions?
The Lectionary Book, I've never checked it.
Oh, yes, all right, so the Lectionary Book is actually this guy. And right now there are no ribbons in it, it's just a Post-it note. But you want to check just to make sure that you're in the right, so we're in year B. And I will take you guys into the sacristy to show you how, if you're not sure what to have up here, where to look. So we'll stop now, and we're going to go back to the sacristy. Cool. Yeah, generally, and the priest will check sometimes. Just like, so when you open this, you're going to want to guide it. Just like that. So just make sure you're always kind of helping these doors along.
You don't check it, Randy, you do, but I've seen you do it. Yeah, but usually, but like today,